The night sky blazed with an unusual light as something tore through Earth's atmosphere. What locals would later dismiss as a meteor was actually a small spacecraft plummeting toward the dense forest outside Portland, Oregon. Inside the failing vessel, Nara gripped the controls with her four-fingered hands, her luminescent blue skin glistening with sweat. Her large, almond-shaped eyes darted between the ship's failing systems and the small sleeping pod where her child Kira lay secured. Warning: hull breach imminent. Ejection recommended, the ship's computer announced in the musical language of the Loraxians. Nara hesitated only a moment before activating the child's escape pod. Better for Kira to have a chance alone than no chance at all. The pod shot away from the main vessel seconds before impact. The crash shook the forest floor, sending wildlife scattering in all directions. Steam and strange liquids hissed from the damaged hull as it came to rest in a small clearing, leaving a long scar of broken trees in its wake. Eric Lambert had been in the ranger station when he felt the impact. At 34, he'd spent nearly a decade protecting these woods, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this. He grabbed his emergency pack and headed toward the faint glow visible through the trees. Probably just a small plane, he muttered to himself, trying to stay calm as he hiked through the darkness, flashlight beam cutting through the mist rising from the forest floor. What he found wasn't a plane. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to flow like liquid in places while remaining solid in others. The craft was unlike anything he'd ever seen, roughly the size of a small bus but shaped like a teardrop. "Hello," Eric called out, approaching cautiously. "Anyone need help?" A section of the hull suddenly slid open, causing Eric to stumble backward. He raised his flashlight, illuminating a figure that emerged slowly from the wreckage. Eric's breath caught in his throat. The being before him stood slightly shorter than him, with blue skin that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. Her features were almost human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face with recognizable features, but undeniably alien. Most striking were her eyes. Large, entirely black, and filled with what Eric immediately recognized as fear. Nara spoke, her voice melodic but incomprehensible. She held up a small device that sparked and sputtered in her hand. "I don't understand," Eric said, keeping his voice gentle. He pointed to himself. "Eric." The alien studied him, then pointed to herself. "Nara." Her device sparked again, and suddenly words emerged, broken but understandable. "Child. Help find child." Before Eric could respond, Nara collapsed. He rushed forward without thinking, catching her before she hit the ground. Her skin felt cool to the touch, and a thick blue fluid seeped from a wound on her side. Eric made a split-second decision. The proper protocol was to call this in. Something this significant would involve the military, scientists, probably men in hazmat suits. But looking at the injured being in his arms, all he saw was someone who needed help, someone searching for their child. He gently lifted Nara, surprised by how light she was, and headed toward his truck parked a mile away. "I'm going to help you," he said, though he wasn't sure she understood. "We'll find your child." As dawn broke over the Oregon forest, Eric drove carefully along back roads toward his cabin, an alien mother unconscious beside him. And no idea how much this night would change his life forever. Eric's cabin stood nestled among towering pines, far enough from hiking trails and ranger patrols to offer privacy. He carried Nara inside, settling her on his couch before gathering first aid supplies. He had no idea if human medicine would help an alien, but the blue blood seeping from her side needed attention. Nara's eyes fluttered open as Eric approached with clean towels. She jerked upright, eyes wide with alarm. "It's okay," Eric said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm trying to help." Nara's hand moved to the damaged translator at her waist. It sparked as she spoke, converting her musical language to broken English. "Where, child? Where Kira?" "I don't know," Eric admitted. "But we'll find her, I promise." Nara studied Eric's face, seeming to search for deception. Finally, she relaxed slightly, allowing him to examine her wound. "I need to clean this," Eric explained, pointing to the injury. To his surprise, Nera reached into a pouch on her suit and removed a small silver device. She placed it over her wound, wincing as it hummed, and sealed the damaged tissue. "That's impressive," Eric said. "Basic medical tool," Nara replied through her translator. "Limited use, almost depleted." Over the next few hours, Eric brought her water and food, most of which she politely declined. She accepted only water and a few berries, explaining that Loraxian biology required different nutrients. "My ship," Nara said suddenly, "must return. Has emergency rations." "Your ship crashed in a public forest," Eric explained. "Going back is dangerous. People will have noticed by now." As if confirming his fears, the distant sound of helicopters reached them. Eric peered through his window blinds to see searchlights sweeping the forest in the distance. "Government," Eric muttered. "They're looking for your crash site." Nara stood shakily. "They will find Kira." "Help." Eric shook his head. "I don't think so. If they find Kira, or you, they'll probably treat you like a science experiment, not a person who needs help." Nara's translator processed his words, and her face fell. "Your kind fears difference." "Some do," Eric admitted. "I don't." He made a quick decision, grabbing a backpack and filling it with supplies. "Tomorrow night, we'll sneak back to your ship to get what you need. Then we search for Kira. But you need rest first." That night, Eric gave Nara his bed while he slept on the couch. He lay awake for hours, questioning his choices. Harboring an alien visitor could cost him his job, his freedom, maybe worse. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Nara's desperate face asking about her child. Morning brought a knock at the door that made them both freeze. "Lambert, you in there?" called a familiar voice. "My supervisor," Eric whispered to Nara. "Hide in the bedroom." Once Nara was out of sight, Eric opened the door to find Ranger Pete Wilson standing there. "Hey Pete, what's up?" "Something crashed in the north section last night. Everyone's being called in to help with the search." Pete peered past Eric. "You okay? You never miss radio check-in." "Sorry," Eric said, thinking quickly. "Stomach bug. Been hugging the toilet all night." Pete stepped back. "That's rough. Well, take another day if you need it. But they're bringing in feds for this one. Might be a downed satellite or something. Call if you're feeling better." After Pete left, Nara emerged. "You lied. For me." Eric nodded. "I did." "Why help stranger? Alien stranger?" Eric considered the question. "Because you're a mother looking for her child. Where I come from, that deserves help, no matter what planet you're from." Something changed in Nara's expression then. A softening, a cautious trust beginning to form. For the first time since the crash, she allowed herself a small smile. "Thank you," she said, the translator conveying her words perfectly. Darkness blanketed the forest as Eric and Nara approached the crash site. Eric had dressed Nara in his spare clothes, jeans, boots, and a hooded jacket that concealed her blue skin. They'd moved silently, avoiding the floodlights set up around the perimeter. "They'd got the whole area locked down," Eric whispered, crouching behind a fallen log. Men in hazmat suits swarmed around Nara's ship, which now resembled a science lab more than a crash site. Nara's translator hummed softly as she spoke. "Need to reach storage compartment. Back section." "It'll be tough," Eric said, surveying the scene. "But I think I see a gap in their patrol pattern." They waited until a team of scientists moved to the front of the ship. Eric led Nara through the underbrush, staying low. When they reached the ship's rear section, Nara pressed her palm against a seamless panel. It slid open, revealing a small compartment filled with strange devices. Nara grabbed a cylindrical object, several packets of what looked like dried food, and a small handheld device with a glowing screen. "Tracker," she explained, pointing to the last item. "Find Kira with this." Suddenly, flashlight beams swept toward them. Movement at the rear quadrant. A voice called out. Run. Eric grabbed Nera's arm, pulling her into the trees as agents rushed toward them. They sprinted through the forest, Eric guiding them through hidden game trails he knew from years of patrolling. The sounds of pursuit gradually faded, but they didn't slow until they reached a small stream. We should be safe here, Eric panted, kneeling to drink from the clear water. Nera activated the tracking device, which projected a holographic map of the surrounding area. A faint pulsing dot appeared several miles to the east. Kira's survival pod, Nera said, hope filling her voice. Still intact. They traveled through the night, following the tracker's signal. Dawn was breaking when they reached a steep ravine where the tracker indicated Kira's pod had landed. Down there, Nera pointed, already scrambling down the rocky slope. The pod lay partially buried in soil and leaves, a silver egg-shaped capsule barely large enough to hold a child. Nera rushed to it, pressing her palm against its surface. The pod opened with a soft hiss. It was empty. Nera let out a sound that needed no translation, the universal cry of a mother's desperation. She frantically searched the pod, finding only a small, torn piece of Kira's clothing. She survived, Eric said, examining tracks in the soft earth nearby. Look, these must be her footprints. The tracks were unlike anything Eric had seen, three-toed and light, leading away from the pod toward a nearby stream. Nera's translator struggled to keep up with her rapid speech. Kira, only 5 cycles old, cannot survive Earth atmosphere long without supplements. How long? Eric asked. 3 Earth days, maybe 4. Nera looked at the rising sun. 1 day passed already. Eric studied the surroundings. If she followed the stream, she might have reached the valley. There are farms there, places she might have sought shelter. As they prepared to follow the tracks, the distant thump of helicopter rotors reached them. Nera quickly closed the empty pod and covered it with branches. Agent Powell believes this is biggest discovery in human history. A voice crackled from Eric's Ranger radio, which he kept to monitor search communications. All units report any unusual sightings immediately. They're expanding the search, Eric said grimly. We need to move faster than them. Nera clutched the tracker, adjusting its settings. A second, fainter signal appeared on the holographic display. Kira's biorhythm, she explained, hope returning to her voice. Still active. Moving. Eric checked his compass. That's toward Wilson Creek Farm. If we cut across the ridge, we can beat the search teams there. As they climbed out of the ravine, Eric noticed Nera struggling to keep pace, her breathing labored. Are you okay? He asked. Nera nodded, though her blue skin had paled considerably. Maternal bonds strained by separation. We'll recover when find Kira. Eric offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Nera took it. Together, they headed toward the signal, racing against both time and those who would separate this mother from her child forever. The small town of Pine Creek appeared through the trees as Eric and Nera descended from the forest hills. They had traveled through the night, following Kira's faint signal, which now pointed toward the eastern edge of town. We need supplies, Eric said, noting Nera's increasingly weakened state. And I can't go back to my cabin. They'll be watching it by now. Nera nodded weakly, leaning against a tree. The separation from her child was clearly taking a physical toll on her. I know someone who might help, Eric said, but it's risky. We'll have to trust her. They waited until dusk before approaching the modest house on the outskirts of town. A woman in her mid-30s was visible through the window, working at a desk surrounded by books and scientific equipment. Eric knocked softly. After a moment, the porch light came on, and the door opened. Eric. The woman looked surprised. What are you doing here at this hour? Olivia, I need your help, Eric said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Can we come in? Olivia Bennett hesitated, noticing the hooded figure behind Eric. We? Please, Eric whispered. It's important. Once inside, Eric locked the door while Olivia drew the curtains. She turned to face them, her scientific curiosity piqued. "What's going on, Eric?" "Everyone's talking about whatever crashed in the forest. The government has the whole area." She stopped mid-sentence as Nera lowered her hood, revealing her blue skin and large dark eyes. Olivia stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of research papers. "What? Who is that?" "This is Nera," Eric said calmly. "She's looking for her child." For several minutes, Olivia could only stare in silent shock as Eric explained the situation. A biologist specializing in evolutionary studies, Olivia's scientific mind raced with questions, but her human compassion ultimately won out. "You're telling me there's a lost alien child out there, and government agents are searching for both of them?" She ran a hand through her hair. "This is beyond anything I could have imagined." Nera's translator hummed. "Please help. Kira cannot survive much longer without proper nutrients." Olivia's professional curiosity engaged. "What does she need? Perhaps I can synthesize something similar." Using Nera's descriptions and the remaining samples from her ship, Olivia worked quickly in her home lab. As a respected scientist with university connections, she had equipment most homes lacked. "This solution should help stabilize Nera," Olivia said, holding up a vial of cloudy liquid. "It's not perfect, but it might buy us time." Nera drank the mixture, and some color returned to her skin. "Thank you," she said, the translator conveying genuine gratitude. As night deepened, they gathered around Olivia's dining table, where Nera's tracking device projected a holographic map of the town. "Kira's signal is coming from this area." Eric pointed to a blinking dot. "The old Millard farm." "That's been abandoned for years," Olivia said, "but recently someone bought it. A reclusive guy named Frank Dawson. Barely shows his face in town." "Could he have found Kira?" Eric asked. Olivia shrugged. "It's possible. He comes to the farmer's market occasionally for supplies, but otherwise keeps to himself." A news alert on Olivia's phone interrupted them. The local station was reporting increased government activity in the area, with officials claiming they were conducting routine environmental tests. "They're lying," Eric said. "They know what crashed wasn't a satellite." "We need a plan," Olivia said, her initial shock now replaced by determination. "I have academic clearance at research facilities throughout the state. That might help us when we find Kira." Nera stood shakily, placing her four-fingered hand on Olivia's. "Why help us? Risk everything." Olivia looked at the alien with newfound respect. "Because science should serve life, not the other way around. And because any mother deserves to be with her child." For the first time since her crash, Nera felt something beyond fear and desperation. She felt hope. With these humans' help, she might actually find Kira. "We'll go to the Miller farm tomorrow," Eric decided. "But we need to be careful. If this Frank person has Kira, we don't know if he's helping or harming her." Outside, the sound of distant helicopters reminded them that time was running out. Dawn painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as Eric, Nera, and Olivia approached the Miller farm. The property sat nestled between rolling hills, with a weathered farmhouse and a large red barn standing against the morning light. "The signal is strongest near that barn," Nera whispered, her tracker pulsing more rapidly. They crept through tall grass, avoiding the gravel driveway where their footsteps might be heard. A battered pickup truck sat parked beside the house, suggesting someone was home. "Let me check first," Eric said, moving ahead cautiously. He peered through a dusty barn window and froze. Inside, a man in his 50s with a gray beard was setting down a bowl of what looked like water near a small makeshift pen. Inside the pen was a small blue figure. Eric rushed back to the others. "I found Kira. She's in the barn. A man is feeding her." Relief flooded Nera's face, but Olivia looked concerned. "Is she okay? Is he hurting her?" "He seems to be caring for her, actually," Eric replied. "But Kira looks weak." Nera started toward the barn, but Eric held her back. "Wait, we need to make sure it's safe." Before they could form a plan, the sound of vehicles approaching made them duck behind a storage shed. 3 black SUVs rolled up the driveway, stopping in front of the farmhouse. "Government agents," Olivia whispered, recognizing the vehicles. A sharp-featured woman in a dark suit emerged from the lead vehicle. "Agent Powell," Eric muttered. "She's heading the investigation. How did they find this place?" Olivia pointed to her phone screen. "Look at this." It showed a local social media page where Frank Dawson had posted cryptic messages over the past day. "Found something extraordinary in my field. Not of this world. Should I call authorities?" "He's been posting hints online," Olivia explained. "Someone must have tipped off the government." They watched in horror as agents surrounded the property. Frank Dawson emerged from his house, looking confused until Agent Powell showed him identification. His face paled as she spoke, and he pointed toward the barn. "They're going for Kira," Nora said, her translator barely keeping up with her panicked words. Eric made a split-second decision. "Around the back. There's another door." They circled behind the barn, finding a small rear entrance partly hidden by hay bales. Inside, they could hear Frank protesting. "I was just trying to help it. The poor thing was hungry and scared." "Sir, this is now a matter of national security," came Agent Powell's stern reply. "Step aside." Eric slipped through the back door, with Nara and Olivia close behind. They hid behind stacked feed bags, watching as agents approached the pen where Kira lay curled up, her blue skin dulled and breathing shallow. Nara gasped at the sight of her child, so weak and afraid. The sound drew an agent's attention. "Did you hear that?" he asked, turning toward their hiding spot. In the moment of distraction, Frank suddenly blocked the agent's path. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just barge in and take her. She needs special care." "Sir, step back, or we'll be forced to." The argument gave Eric the chance they needed. He signaled Olivia, who knocked over a stack of empty buckets on the far side of the barn. When the agents turned toward the noise, Eric and Nara rushed forward. Nara reached the pen first, scooping up her child with a cry of relief that needed no translation. Kira's eyes fluttered open, recognizing her mother instantly. "Stop them," Agent Powell shouted as she spotted the blue-skinned mother holding her child. Eric grabbed a nearby pitchfork, not to threaten but to block the agent's path as Nara fled toward the back door where Olivia waited. Just as they reached the door, Nara stumbled, weakened by days of separation from her child. An agent grabbed her arm, trying to pull Kira away. "No," Nara cried, holding her child tighter. Frank Dawson, seeing the mother's desperation, tackled the agent. "Run," he yelled to them. "Take the back road through the orchard." They fled into the morning light, the reunion between mother and child marred by the shouts of pursuit and the knowledge that their struggle was far from over. The orchard provided temporary cover as Eric, Olivia, Nara, and the weakened Kira fled from the Miller farm. Behind them, agents fanned out in search patterns while helicopters circled overhead. "We can't outrun them for long," Olivia panted as they crouched behind a thick cluster of apple trees. Not with Kira in this condition. The small alien child lay limp in her mother's arms, her breathing shallow and her normally luminescent skin dull and faded. Nara cradled her daughter, whispering in their musical language. "She needs the medical unit from my ship," Nara said through her translator. Without it, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Eric checked his map on his phone. The crash site is heavily guarded by now. There's no way to get back there. Olivia's scientific mind worked rapidly. "Wait. The research facility where I sometimes work, Webb Laboratory, they have advanced medical equipment. If I could get access, maybe we could adapt something to help Kira." "Too risky," Eric said. "The government will be watching all official facilities." "Not the lower levels," Olivia countered. "I have access to a private research area. Few people know about it." They had little choice. As Kira's condition worsened, they made their way through back roads and trails to the edge of town where the research facility stood. a modern glass and steel building surrounded by security fences. There's a service entrance, Olivia explained as they observed from a distance. Delivery trucks use it. We might slip in during a shipment. Fortune favored them when a large truck approached the gate. As the security guard checked the driver's credentials, Eric led them to the back of the vehicle. They slipped underneath, clinging to the truck's undercarriage as it rolled into the facility compound. Once inside, Olivia guided them through service corridors, using her keycard to access restricted areas. They narrowly avoided security guards twice before reaching the lower laboratory level. In here, Olivia whispered, scanning her card at an unmarked door. The laboratory beyond was small but well-equipped, with advanced medical devices lining the walls. Olivia quickly began gathering equipment while Eric stood watch at the door. I can modify this cellular regenerator, Olivia said, connecting devices together. If Nara can guide me on Loraxian biology. They worked frantically, Nara explaining through her translator what her child needed while Olivia adjusted the equipment. Kira lay on an examination table, her small chest barely moving. Try now, Olivia said, activating the modified device. A soft blue light enveloped Kira, and for several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then the child's eyes fluttered open, and color began returning to her skin. It's working, Eric exclaimed. Nara wept with relief, touching her forehead to her child's in what seemed to be a traditional Loraxian gesture of love. Their celebration was short-lived. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security breach detected in Section C, announced a computerized voice. They found us, Eric said, peering through the small window in the door. Security guards are coming this way. Olivia quickly disconnected Kira from the equipment. The treatment's not complete, but it should stabilize her for now. We need another way out, Eric said, searching the room desperately. Nara pointed to a small maintenance hatch near the floor. Where does that lead? The utility tunnels, Olivia replied. They run beneath the entire facility. Eric pried the hatch open with a crowbar from a tool rack. One by one, they slipped into the narrow passage, pulling the hatch closed behind them, just as the laboratory door burst open. The tunnels were dark and claustrophobic, lit only by emergency lights spaced at wide intervals. They crawled forward, guided by Olivia's knowledge of the facility layout. These should lead to the east perimeter, she whispered, near the forest. They had almost reached the exit when boots thundered on the metal grating above them. Agent Powell's voice echoed through a megaphone. We know you're in the tunnel system. All exits are sealed. Surrender the aliens immediately. Eric looked at Nara, who held her now conscious but still weak child. Kira blinked at him with large, frightened eyes that reflected the dim emergency lights. No, Eric said firmly. We're not giving up. There's still one place we can go, if we can reach it. Where? Olivia asked. Nara's ship. It's our only chance now. The forest breathed around them as moonlight filtered through the canopy. Eric led their small group through hidden deer paths, avoiding the main trails where agents would be searching. Kira, stronger now but still weak, clung to her mother's back while Olivia followed behind, constantly checking for pursuers. The ship is just beyond that ridge, Eric whispered, pointing to a hill ahead. But there will be guards. Nara's translator hummed softly. If we reach the ship, I can activate emergency protocols. The guards will be temporarily disabled. They paused at the ridge's edge, surveying the scene below. Nara's crashed ship glowed under powerful floodlights. Scientists in white coats moved around it like ants, while armed guards patrolled the perimeter. There's our opening. Eric pointed to a gap in the patrol pattern. But we'll need a distraction. Olivia pulled supplies from her backpack, chemicals she had taken from the lab. I can create a reaction that will draw their attention to the north side. While Olivia prepared her makeshift diversion, Nara touched Eric's arm. Why risk everything for us? Your life here. Eric looked at the alien mother and child, seeing not strange beings but a family trying to survive. Some things matter more than the life you planned, he said simply. Olivia's distraction worked perfectly. A series of small explosions and colorful smoke threw most of the guards to the north edge of the site. Eric, Nara, and Kira slipped through the gap, while Olivia circled around to meet them at the ship. They were just meters from the vessel when a shout rang out. "Stop right there." Agent Powell stood before them, gun raised. "Step away from the aliens, Lambert." Eric moved in front of Nara and Kira. "They're not a threat. They just want to go home." "That's not your decision to make," Powell replied, her finger tightening on the trigger. "This is bigger than any of us." The standoff stretched for what felt like eternity. Then Olivia appeared behind Powell. "Diane," she called, using the agent's first name. "You know me. I'm a scientist. I've been with them. They mean no harm." Powell hesitated, her gun wavering slightly. In that moment of distraction, Nara pressed something on her wrist device. The ship hummed to life, a doorway materializing in its side. "Run," Eric shouted. Powell fired. The bullet caught Eric in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell to his knees as Nara pulled him toward the ship. Inside, the vessel pulsed with soft blue light. Nara laid Eric on a platform, his blood staining her hands. Kira watched with wide, frightened eyes as her mother worked frantically with the ship's medical equipment. "The wound is deep," Nara said, her translator converting her worried tones. "But I can heal it." Outside, more agents arrived, surrounding the ship. Olivia had been captured, forced to her knees beside Agent Powell. Inside, a warm light enveloped Eric's wound. The pain subsided as Loraxian technology repaired his damaged tissue. He sat up, touching his healed shoulder in amazement. "We must leave now," Nara said urgently. "They will breach the ship soon." Eric looked at the control panels, then back at Nara and Kira. The child reached out, taking his hand in her small blue one. In that touch, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: belonging. "Take me with you," he said suddenly. Nara's large eyes widened. "Your home is where I choose it to be," Eric finished. "I can help you find a safe place, a new home for both of you." Outside, Olivia watched as the ship began to glow brighter. Agent Powell barked orders to stop it, but the scientists shook their heads. The technology was beyond their understanding. The ship rose slowly at first, then with gathering speed. Olivia smiled through her tears, knowing Eric had made his choice. Inside, Eric watched Earth grow smaller through a viewing portal. Nara stood beside him, Kira between them, their hands joined. "Where will we go?" Eric asked. Nara's translator conveyed her words perfectly. "There are peaceful systems beyond your solar boundary, places where different species live together, where Kira can grow safe from those who would fear her difference." As the blue marble of Earth faded into the star field, Eric felt not loss but possibility. He had found something rare, a chance to help this small family find peace, to be part of something extraordinary. "Home," Kira said suddenly in English, without the translator. She looked up at Eric with trust in her large eyes. "We go home." Eric smiled, placing a gentle hand on the child's head. "Yes," he said. "We're going home." The ship accelerated, leaving Earth behind, as it carried its unusual family toward the stars and whatever new beginning awaited them among distant worlds.